Sam, did I hear you?
Yes. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you. I'm fine. Is Kelly with you?
Yeah, we got Kelly here. We have Liz, Matt Eckel, who's our grievance chair. I believe you talked to him last time.
Yeah,
For
Laura is on the call too.
For some reason, have who else too? You said?
Oh, Laurel is also on the call.
Oh yeah, Laurel. For some reason I haven't seen her. I do have admin powers, by the way, and I don't really know why, but I have the powers to admit people. Apparently, it keeps asking me.
I do too. Same.
Okay. I just wanted to notify the administrators. So, is your team here, John?
Yeah, let me, first of all, hello to everyone on your team. And Sherry, can you let me know if most of our people jumped on?
Yeah, I'm just going to go through quickly. Yes, John, everyone is here from our team.
Okay, let me list the ones that should be on the call with me. Jim Carey, of course, Sherry, you just heard. Liz Gerbolini, Judith Ponacel, Ruth Barr, Tanya is on the call, as well as Olga and Linda DeBardio from our side. So we've got everybody pretty much on the call today. Thank you very much for accepting this date. And also want to thank GAU for the proposal that we received on Tuesday from Kelly and Sam. We have some questions. We'd like to go over those with you and have you walk through them at the appropriate time. And we also received a list of budgetary related questions that we can go over if necessary later as well. But I thought what I would do is just kind of make the announcement as far as the meeting goes from a formality standpoint, and then maybe turn it over to Sam and Kelly if you'd like to proceed as you think is appropriate. This is a meeting that's being held pursuant to Section 447.309 Florida statutes, Florida's bargaining section. The parties have agreed to hold this meeting virtually, and we agreed to this date and time to give the opportunity for the parties to continue their negotiations. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Kelly, and you, Sam.
Thank you. Kelly, you're muted.
Yeah, Kelly, we don't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, as usual, I just want to make it abundantly clear that this is a public meeting, as John just said, and it is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. So where do we want to start? With our budget questions, probably, or should we start with your questions for us?
Well, it doesn't matter. I'll let you decide. We just got a few questions. We wanted to give you an opportunity to go through your proposal at some point, kind of walk through them with us if you don't mind, and then as you go through, there are just a few questions we want to pose.
Okay, then let's start with our questions, because the questions that we put together are a big part of understanding where you're coming from. So
okay, well, I can go through those.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go down the list and I'll ask and you can answer. So first question is, what is the actual state allocation of operating funds to USF in the 2020 to 2021 academic year?
Okay, let me kind of go through it and kind of break it down for you so it's easier to understand the answer to that. The operating funds are made up of general revenue and educational enhancements, and the general revenue is $240,383 for this period, and educational plus educational enhancement, we had another $53,505,000. Now, you add those together, but you have to subtract from that to get the net figure, the net operating fund figure for the 2021 year, we have a 6% holdback that we've already explained, at a prior meeting. That amount, that 6% holdback, amounts to subtracting $17.4 million from the general revenue and educational enhancement. You further have to reduce from those two things a decrease in performance funding that the university experienced. And that decrease in performance funding amounts to an additional $479,000 reduction. On top of that, we've got to reduce the operating fund amount that I gave you by what I'll call gubernatorial veto, the governor's veto in the budget. And that amounts to an additional subtraction of $250,000. So to answer your question, the net, after you subtract those amounts from the state allocation of the operating funds, the net amount is $275,729,000. Now, what's important to understand is that this net amount represents, Kelly, a decrease of over $18 million compared to the 2019-2020, academic year. So we're way behind from just the prior year. Also, what's really important to understand is that the Board of Governors has instructed all SUS universities to plan for an additional 2.5% to the 6% cut. So it's basically plan for an 8.5% cut in fiscal year 2021. So that 2.5% on top of 6% subtracts another $7.3 million. So, we're going to be way behind, and each university has been instructed to plan for potentially an additional cut of 10% to everything in fiscal year 2022. So everything is looking like we're on a downward spiral in cuts, and the effect and the negative effect on the operating funds that we have to operate on in the university. So hopefully that'll help you later on after this call. If you need to, we can send you some of this information in an outline form, but that answers that first question.
Okay. Yeah, that gives us context for that. So next is, what does the student enrollment numbers at both the undergraduate and the graduate level look like as of today, and how does that compare to fall of 2019?
Okay, thank you very much for asking. And of course, that's one of the things that we mentioned, early on in our discussions last meeting. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty what's going to happen with enrollment. I know that Sam is somewhat encouraging. He thinks that maybe it'll actually be higher, and we would hope that that's the case, Sam, that ends up being the case. But right now, as of the 10th of August, year-to-date comparison is there's a decrease of 2%, and this is a decrease in student credit hours. This is how we calculate, from the budget and the revenue standpoint. So just that 2% cut compared to fall of 2019 is a loss in operating revenues of $5 million or so. So if things continue, if we continue to have a further slide on enrollment, that number will grow. It may be that enrollment will do what Sam seems to think it's going to do, and it's going to bounce up. But there's a great deal of uncertainty there. At least what we see so far in early August is that it's going to be a loss of revenue.
Okay. Again, we're just trying to get context here so we can evaluate when we're going forward later in the session. So aside from rejecting the financial proposals that GAU's put forward in the past, what other steps is USF taking to reduce the operating costs?
Okay, all senior administrators, folks who have authority in the budget, can influence the budget, are being required to submit plans, Kelly, for operational reductions, budget reductions. And those plans that they must submit must show reductions of between 10 to 15% over 2 years, the next 2 years. So, we're trying to get a hold of this through having folks who are involved with the budget submit plans on how we're going to accomplish that cut. So we're being as aggressive as we think we can, and planning for the fiscal year and into the next fiscal year's odds, planning for these loss in revenues.
Okay, but can you give us an example of what some of those plans look like? Is that cutting the people who are making $400,000 salaries? Is that cutting, what else? Other stuff.
Well,
So
I
put
can't
that a
give
little
you
more
any specifics right now, but I will tell you that they could run the gamut of cutting compensation to layoffs to, all kinds of things. So they got to look at their budgets, their part of their budget, and come up with that. But I can't right now give you any specifics. I don't have that.
Okay.
Kelly, this is Jim Gary.
Mhm.
The planning is underway right now, so the plans haven't been finalized. It's still an ongoing process.
Right. I'm just trying to get a sense for with the understanding that it is a tentative thing at the moment, just trying to get a sense of what the plans are.
Yeah, the cuts aren't tentative. It's how they're going to make them is what hasn't been decided.
Right. And that's what I mean.
Yeah, so we just can't tell you right now.
Okay. I guess then moving along. So what level of reduction or how much reduction in operating costs has USF seen due to the near complete shutdown of campus over the last 5 months? Like campus rec has been completely closed. Residence halls have been pretty much completely closed. Most other buildings have been at significantly reduced occupancy, which I know as an engineer who studies energy, that when you cut the occupancy of a building, its energy demand, its electricity bill goes way down.
Yeah. Well, what I'll tell you, and I'll try to be as specific as I can right now, but any reduction in the operations of the campus and the shutdown of the campus is in any reduction in the operating costs resulting from that has absolutely been dwarfed by the expense that the university has incurred as a result of the virus. Generally speaking, when it comes to operating reductions, the university has been very proud and worked very hard to try to not eliminate jobs, to try to keep people employed. Job security, we know, is very important to folks, particularly during a disaster like we're having now. And to put people on an unemployment line is a very tough thing to do. So the university has been trying to protect jobs, and that means keeping people employed. So there has not been, in that regard, where a lot of employers around the country through their payroll, and as you know, operating expenses are largely made up of payroll expenses and benefit expenses. Okay, that's where the lion's share of operating costs are. So the university has really not experienced, a reduction because of the way we've approached trying to protect people that are working at the university. I'll tell you too that while the university campus was shut down, most of the buildings were still online, up and were being heated and cooled. Of course, in the summer it was not heat; it was being cooled. And so the reduction in utilities has not been experienced to be very much at all. That's what I've been told in talking with our finance office. And so, but let me mention this too, that another item that you might think of that would have been helpful to cut on would be travel. But what we did, as y'all know, because we reached that MOU, is that when people who had travel expenses couldn't get reimbursement from the airline or wherever they were using for transportation and all, the university's been trying to help them out. So we really haven't seen much of a cut in the expense when it comes to travel because of the reimbursement direction that the university has taken. But what I would say on the flip side of the coin is that, and what I mentioned about, these reductions in expenses being dwarfed by the cost of the pandemic. And you read about this in the media, what it's driving a lot of businesses into bankruptcy right now and shutting down a lot of departments. Is that just the pandemic from March the 20th through, we predict through fall of 2020, it's estimated that the extra expense just associated with the pandemic and the technology and so forth attendant to that is in excess of $31 million. So I will tell you that the cost of the pandemic outstripped any savings that you may have had in the operating expense side of the equation. Okay. And that's what this university, and it's not just us, it seems like, all the universities are faced with this, and the extreme cost of handling the needs of being able to continue to be in operation during a pandemic, even though the campus was shut down. I want to mention two here that may be somewhat helpful to kind of take a look at, is that campus recreation and residential halls, Kelly, are not funded by general operating funds, but they operate off of the student fees and student payments. So they're not part of the operation. So you really can't compare that when you ask your question. I think I've answered that as best I can.
And John, this is Jim again. I just want to add that one of the things with financing a university is you can't pay recurring expenses with non-recurring money. So if we save, let's say we somehow saved $100,000 this year because of some unforeseen circumstance, so we've got $100,000 that we just have by chance, and we're not going to get it again next year. We can't use that money to make a commitment to a recurring expense that's going to go on every year thereafter. So, and that's a common problem, is you can't use non-recurring money to pay recurring expenses, or you will eventually get into financial trouble that way. So the university has to be responsible about that.
Okay. All right, so moving on then. So next question, in light of everything that you just said, what was the purpose behind the, by my math, roughly $930 per officer increase in annual salary for members of the Police Benevolent Association bargaining unit, the police officers?
Okay, you're referring, I'm sure, to the agreement that was reached, a new 3-year agreement with the PBA union. That agreement was reached in February, prior to the pandemic and the shutdown of the university, and certainly none of us had a crystal ball at that time to know that just within a couple, 3 weeks from that agreement, we were going to end up with the pandemic and the shutdown of the U.S. But that agreement was reached prior to any of this, and it was for a successor agreement, and it basically provided for a 1-year increase of 1.5% based on merit, based on performance. So that's what that. I don't know whether it was 980. You got that figure from something, but I know it was a 1.5% increase.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the signatures page, and it looks like it was signed on June 16th, though.
What happened is, here's what happened. It was tentatively agreed in February, and then because of the pandemic, everything was put on hold as far as getting it all signed. That's what happened there. But the agreement was in February.
John, if I recall, you didn't want to talk about budget issues at that time with us when that was being discussed with the police. And I think that's one of the causes of confusion, that the university made it pretty clear that they didn't feel comfortable talking about budget issues at a time. Whether they were talked about in February or June, the point is the budget issues were being TA'd for one union, when it wasn't something that was on the table at all for us. And we want clarity, I think, about why that is.
Well, I have to go back and look at the dates of our meetings and so forth, but I'll tell you that, and I'm trying to look in my notebook now, I think we had our first meeting in January of 2020. The next meeting after that, I believe it was canceled, the one in March. So, you know, we, at the time we met with the PBA, we certainly didn't know what was going to happen with the pandemic. And I don't think, you know, at that point in time, we were looking at non-economic things that y'all were putting on the table and addressing non-economic items. The PBA, I'll tell you, they did not make any non-economic demands that I can remember. And we jumped right into, and I think reached an agreement in one meeting.
Interesting.
Okay.
Again, this is Jim Gary. The total commitment for that 1.5% pay raise was something around $50,000 because I think there's 42 police officers total. It's a small unit. We're not talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about $50,000 plus whatever benefits were associated. So maybe it was $70,000, but it certainly wasn't a very large commitment in terms of proportion.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So moving on to the next question then. Coming up into this next year, are there any planned salary increases, especially for administrators or sports staff who are making over $200,000 per year?
Not at this time.
Okay.
We want to mention too that athletics, while there's no plan at this time, athletics is really apples and oranges because that's an auxiliary operation, and their expenditures aren't drawn from the general operation revenue.
So does that mean that they have complete financial independence from the rest of the university?
It means that it's not tied to the same budget as that your expenses would be tied to. And but the bottom line is we have at this time there are no increases planned.
Okay. How much did USF spend? I guess you kind of already covered that before, so I'm going to skip that question.
Yeah, I think I did.
So I guess the last question on here deals with the endowment, which currently is around $500 million. How is that being invested or used, et cetera? Like, what sort of interest rate is it generating? What is that being used for? Is there any mechanism to use that? Because that is a relatively recurring revenue since it's interest on the investment. Why can't we use that to cover the cost of the emergency, especially for some of the lowest paid workers on campus?
You know, that I've been faced with similar questions before when it comes to endowments, and a lot of it has to do with, you know, just a misunderstanding of what the endowment is made up of and how you can use the endowment. And, you know, endowments are largely made up of contributions that people make, and they're restricted. Not only is the actual corpus of the endowment restricted in what you can use it for through the terms of the endowment and the contributors, but also, you know, the interest on that. So that the restrictions that the donors place, and those monies are largely and really only can be used for such things as professorships, scholarships, and things like that. And these restrictions can't be changed unilaterally. We can't just dip in, the university can't just dip in to the endowment and spend it on salaries increases or, insurance benefits, fees, and things like that, because it would violate the terms of the endowment. And that is, you know, it's self-defeating for you to try to do that, because if you rob the ability of the endowment to grow by robbing the corpus and not letting it grow to what you need in order to make the distributions that you need to make from it. It's gonna, what you do is you send a message to donors that you're going to be robbing it for these kinds of purposes, which was never intended by the donor, and so you could end up damaging the endowment long term to do that. So you just don't use endowments for the kinds of operating expenses that you really want to use them for in your situation. Okay.
I guess I just don't understand the purpose of the endowment in that case. Like, if the entire purpose of it is to be a dragon sitting on a pile of treasure that gradually accumulates and doesn't get used for much of anything, I don't really see the point of it.
And John,
Well, yeah, I mean, go ahead, Jim. You want to mention something?
to Kelly's question, where do those restrictions come from? Because I find it surprising that alumni who are making charitable donations ask for their donations to not be used to pay for the poor. Like, it seems like a strange addition for a contract, and I have no clue where that would come from or why that would be in the contract to begin with, that you know, a university can't use endowment interest to pay its lowest paid workers. Why would any charitable person put that in anything? And,
well, because of, I'm sorry, go ahead. I thought you were finished.
oh, I am. Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Well, folks who make contributions to endowments will have, oftentimes, in most situations actually, direction as to how it's to be used. And that's not to say this is not a charitable effort and endeavor on an individual's part to make the donation. He or she just wants to make sure that those funds are being used in an appropriate fashion and what they believe to be a charitable fashion, or a fashion that's important for the operation and the health and well-being of the university. So it's you know, I've never known of an endowment that would say to prospective donors that you can't indicate any restriction on how you intend for it to be used, because you'd really be damaging the ability to grow your endowment if you did that kind of thing.
Okay.
So I think Kelly, we've tried to answer your questions. We spent a lot of times talking with the finance office of the university and going through all this material. Of course, we didn't get it till Friday, so we've been, you know, with other things going on at the university. I mean, there's a very busy office right now. You can imagine, with the budget situation that we're under, but we were able to pull this information together, and we hope that it's helpful.
Yeah, that does give us some context to make our decisions about how we're going to approach this with you. So you mentioned that you had questions for us about our proposal, so I feel like that's probably the next place to go from here.
That's fine. We can turn to your proposal then. I believe that, Kelly, your MOU is identical to ours, the actual wording. Can you think of any? Did I miss something?
Sorry, I hear somebody in the background there.
I just made an Instagram.
Whoever's talking about Instagram, would you mind?
What am I supposed to do now?
Sadhu, would you mind muting yourself, please?
But all I see is suggestions.
Hang on a second, John.
Who else I should follow.
Maybe I can mute. Who is it?
I muted them. I muted them.
Okay.
Is it connected to your Facebook?
No.
Oh my god.
Connected to your Facebook and
I don't want to connect to my Facebook. I want this one's for
Hey,
ministry.
Sadhu Mocha, would you please
Okay,
mute
I'm
yourself?
you can keep adding people.
Okay.
I just muted him. This is Sherry, so he's going to have to unmute himself when he's ready to actually speak, because he's not hearing any of us.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. So your question was, the text of our MOU is the same, correct?
I just want to confirm. I did not look at every single word, but it looked to me like it was the same as the wording that we had in ours.
Right. Yeah, we did. We made some changes. There were some points that I have highlighted. Haven't changed the wording, but just highlighted for emphasis to discuss. The parts that are different relative to yours are, we've increased the USF healthcare contribution from, I believe it was 27 something on yours to 29.50 on ours.
No, I understand that. My question had to do with the actual two-page memorandum of understanding.
Oh, okay, that right up at the beginning. Yeah, I don't believe anything has changed there.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that I didn't see any, but if there was, if I missed something, I'd want you to point it out to me on those 2 pages.
Yeah, I took the file that you gave us, I
Okay,
downloaded
all
it,
right.
and then I made modifications, which is why Sherry Tompkins from your office is actually in the comments from suggesting changes.
Then now let's go into the actual contract, and we can go to page by page, and I want you to walk. We sort of. It looked to me like one major change that you are proposing is to back away from the tentative agreements that had been signed off by the parties after lengthy negotiations and the use of the word student. Is that correct?
So the answer to that is a little bit complicated. So we are not proposing to back off on the tentative agreement. However, at the table, you acknowledged that the phrase student employees was not acceptable. And so when the tentative agreements were signed, I'm not the one who signed them. We probably should have been a little bit more fine-tooth comb about that. But when you put together the tentative agreements that ended up getting initialed off, you blocked off things that included the word student employees, which you yourself acknowledged that that's not an agreement.
I didn't block off anything in these. I did not block. I don't know what you're talking. I didn't block off the word student where you have in your proposal. And in fact, the things that are signed off on, I just want, look, I'm not trying to, this is not meant to be offensive at all. I just want to clarify what is being done here in your proposal, okay? I've got, and you attached to the material you forwarded in your proposal, the pages that we signed off and initialed. I've got them in front of me. And I'm looking, for example, if you look to page 2, on page 2 of the things that were signed off, and this is under section 2.1, and just look for a minute with
under R?
With R, just R for a minute, just to you can pick any of these. Where in R did I block off student employees? It's all been signed off. It's underlined. It was our language, and both parties at the table. Now, while we were at the table, I tried to make it clear. So we're in agreement on this. I'm going to go ahead and initial it, and after I do, I'll send it for you to initial. You know, UGAU to initial. And where have I blocked off student?
So you're misunderstanding what I mean when I say block off. Do I have presenter? I do not appear to have presenter. Sherry, would you mind giving Kelly Osterman presenter privileges so we can see what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Give me just a quick second.
We did agree at the table that was not going to be signed off on. The reason it did get signed off on is that when I signed off on the documents, I didn't notice that was still included. I thought that it had been edited out. But I think we made it clear on the table that we were not agreeing to that when we signed off on it. So
for everybody who's on a computer and is able to see, which it looks to be most of USF's bargaining team minus John. So I currently have highlighted the word student employees. And when I say block off, I'm talking about this right. You might actually not be able to see the way I'm seeing it.
We can, yeah, Kelly, we can absolutely see your highlighting.
I can see your mark of being blocked off. I see that you marked it. I thought you said that I had marked it.
So when I say you blocked it off, what I mean is, like if you look at lines 22 to 33, off to the right of that language, there is a big curly brace with JFD 62320. When I say you blocked it off, that's what I'm saying is that you marked that whole subset, or that entire block of language with a curly brace and it initialed it. I'm not saying that you blacked something out or struck anything. I'm saying that you blocked it off.
I blocked it off because that's what we agreed to at the table, and I initialed, and then I sent it to you, the GAU, for initialization, and you did so. My question is this. if I'm incorrect, just let me know. It sounds like what you're saying now is that despite the fact that GAU initialed these changes, after we at the table agreed to them as a tentative, we know it's just a tentative agreement. I'm not saying it's a contract yet, but you're now saying that despite that, you don't want to include the word student.
What I'm saying is that immediately before discussing that, we had a two-sided discussion where both parties said, okay, we understand that student employees is not acceptable, so let's move on. And that language got slipped in multiple places into this tentative agreements. Like the understanding from our end at the table, which admittedly should probably have been a little bit more precise in our checking through that document when initially. But it is our understanding at the table was that both parties have acknowledged that student employees is not acceptable and that the word student would be struck out. It would be removed from those languages. The rest of that language, the rest of R, so a statement that employees are expected to be on campus, blah, 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 that would be okay. However, our issue is with the inclusion of that word student because both parties acknowledge that student is not acceptable. And there's a number of other places within this document that, or within the proposals that has been the case as well.
So in other words, I think you answered the question, and that is despite it having been initialed, you now do not want student in there. That's as simple as that. Is that right?
We never wanted it in there.
Correct.
It was a slip up because we didn't notice that it was on the signed off version that you sent us. I thought we made it clear on the table that we were not agreeable to that language several times. I recall.
In fact, we have recording of you yourself, John, saying, I don't remember what the exact phrasing was, but saying that.
Saying what?
Saying that USF understands that student employee is not in agreement.
But we are not agreeable to that. You said that, yeah. I remember.
I also remember that. Yeah, he absolutely said, so not the word student employee, but everything else in this section. And we said yes.
Sherry, just to make it clear as we go forward, when both parties sign the document, you're agreeing that what you see on paper is what you're agreeing to. So when Sam initialed on July 3rd, it appeared to our team that your group agreed to the language in that proposal. So that's all that John's saying. I just want to be clear about that, okay? So there's not an argument going back and forth. In the future, if somebody does not agree with the language in the document, it should be striked out, initialed, and then signed.
Okay, well, like as I mentioned in my email the other day, we are graduate assistants. Our primary profession is teaching and research. We're not labor lawyers. So we made a mistake. And ultimately,
I'm just trying to help you. So as we go forward.
Yeah, all we're trying to get is clarification, y'all. We're not, I really think that Sherry was correct in the way she's expressed it. So going forward, we'll just be a little more careful about how we do things. This is not trying to be accusatory. I want to make clear that I understand what you're trying to do here. So your proposal is to take out that word student.
Exactly.
But to leave the other language in. Is that right?
Yeah, the rest of that language is fine. It's just that word student in the 10 or so places. I don't remember the exact number, but the 10 or so places that the word student pops up. Our proposal is to strike that word out, but otherwise the language is fine.
Okay, very good. All right, well, thanks for clarifying that. It helps us out because we were going through it and we want to make sure that we don't have a breakdown in communication again. The other, it seems to us then that the only other changes that you've made is that with insurance, you're still, when it comes to health insurance, your proposal is that the Board of Trustees, the university pay 100% of the cost of health insurance for bargaining unit employees who elect to be covered. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then the only other change that we can see here, let me look here for a minute, is you've put the 30% fee provision in your proposal.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yep.
So let's walk through this. I'm looking at, what did you do with duration article? Let me look here.
Those are the only changes I made. I didn't make anything else.
So it's the same duration that we had in ours. I mean,
Right.
because we had to modify, we felt that to make it consistent with MOU. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all that was doing. I know one of the questions y'all had on that, Kelly, that is you wanted to start bargaining earlier than we had proposed. Is that right?
That's something we had discussed at the table, but Sam or Liz can correct, or Matt even can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think March, I believe, is the date that's in here, and March is.
Yeah, that's what we put down there.
March would possibly be okay, but January or February would be better, because like we've seen this time around how much this can drag out. Like we started, this has been going on for 8 months now. We'd like to get that started sooner.
Well, why don't we do this? If we can reach an agreement, because while we were suggesting March, maybe we could compromise with February or something like that.
That would probably be okay.
Anyway, you think about it anyway. You know, if you decide now.
I think if we do agree to doing it in February, we would want to have some assurance from GAU that we're going to have regular meetings starting in February and that they would happen more often than every 4 weeks. I think we need to make sure that we get something signed prior to whatever is signed today, if it is signed, not being applicable anymore.
Okay, so let's see what else there is. So we got that. I think given your clarification, and is there anything else you want to explain about your proposal before we take a break?
So I do want to give you just a little bit of context, just to make it clear that we're committed to negotiating here. So just in terms of like the history of our proposals, based on my math, our original proposal that we discussed in I don't remember when that was, whenever it was, 2 sessions ago, we discussed a proposal which, based on my math, was expected to cost USF about $7.3 million for this upcoming year. The proposal we discussed at the last session was a cost to USF of $5 million. Our cost, again, based on my math anyway, your math might be slightly different, but based on my math, the estimated cost of our proposal is $2 million. So we're committed to negotiating to find something that works for everybody.
Well, I'll tell you, your fee proposal itself is going to cost $1.74 million. Just the fee part.
Let's see. I'm saying 1.2, but it's kind of in the same ballpark. So.
So quite a bit off, I think, but in any event, between 1.2 and 1.7.
I mean, ultimately, it comes down to differences in assumptions. Like, if you're using a higher amount of fees than I am, because
let me tell you I'll tell you how we got to it. Okay, in your 30% proposal, the fee is $720 a semester. There are approximately 4,000. Say 30, graduate students, 30, I think we're at 43 graduate students. 720 times 2 semesters times 4,033 students equals 5.8 million, and 30% of 5.8 million under our calculation is 1.74 million.
Okay, so
I mean, this is all money. I mean, it's just kind of an expense. So we have to really look at these proposals and cost them out and be as accurate as we can. I mean, obviously we don't know for sure how many students are going to be at a particular time, but that's graduate students anyway. We just gotta look at it and put everything
So based on your description there, I can tell you exactly what the difference is. So the discrepancy here is coming from, you're assuming that the fee relief is going to apply to all 4,033 or so graduate students. Our proposal is specifically for graduate assistants, which there are roughly 2,100 of, so roughly half the number of graduate assistants compared to
Okay.
graduate students.
Yeah, but could be
Okay. So by your calculations, 1.2 something?
people in
Something around there. So when I was doing my baseline fees was slightly different as well. My baseline fees was using engineering because that's that's my reference point. I don't really have a way to look up the fees for philosophy, but so I was using engineering. So my baseline fees were slightly higher. I also accounted for roughly 50% of graduate assistants having summer appointments and thus having fees over the summer. So
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for explaining that. Is there anything else that you want to go over?
no, I think that's all of that.
Okay. Anything else, Sam, that you want to go over?
I mean, I do want to emphasize the importance of healthcare costs right now and insurance costs. And I think that this is something that the university should actually take very seriously, just on epidemiological grounds. That I think this plank in our proposal is particularly important. I think it's, but also just from a public policy standpoint, it makes more sense to encourage people, incentivize people to get health insurance, especially graduate students who are going to be interacting with undergrads and often older professors. And, you know, it's considering it's a pandemic, we want to see as many graduate students. And we know, like, it's not a secret that there's this, increase in costs. But, the fact of the matter is, that, as a public institution, I think it's USF's, duty and obligation to make sure that its students aren't a risk to themselves and each other, right? Especially in a time of pandemic. I think the presence of the pandemic makes it more pertinent than even it is normally, right? And I hope you really understand this, right? And the difference between 170 and free, right? For a lot of graduate students who are trying to pay their healthcare costs.
Okay. Thank you.
This is Jim Gary. I just want to correct, for the record, I did a dump of HR GAs, and we actually had 2,643 GAs at 0.25 FTE or higher last fall, and we had 1,390 master's students appointed at 0.25 FTE, and that's where the 4,033 figure came from. So that's just straight from the data.
I think the HR documents we get list like 2,200 units.
Yeah, and in fact, the USF what is that called? The USF fact book for 2019. I have it here somewhere. USF fact book. I don't have it here. Sorry, I feel like I'm wasting time here, but
Well, anyway, we don't need to argue it back and forth. I just wanted on the record that those were the figures I used, and they came from a reliable source. So
yeah, my 2100 assumption is based off of the unit data that we receive, which is in line with USF Factbook 2019-2020, which says graduate assistants 2,197.
okay, well, I went off the payroll. So anyway, that's where my figures came from. So I'll check into that to make sure.
It's possible that some students may have multiple appointments too. That could be the issue.
That's probably it, actually.
Yeah, so a lot of students have 2.25, stuff like that. They split up in really weird ways, different departments.
Okay, well, I just wanted to put that in there so you can continue.
Could I jump in really quickly before we move on? This is Matthew Eckel, USFGA Grievance Chair. Dr. Gary, would it be possible for you to share that data source with us, or is there any reason not to?
I'll look into it and find out, but certainly I will, if it's okay to share.
Yeah, that'd be great, so we could be on the same page. Thank you.
Yeah, even if it's anonymized, because I know that some GAs might not have consented to have their information shared with us in a detailed area.
Yep.
Hi, I wanted to provide some insight for the administration and those on the call about just the financial precarity of graduate assistants in general, especially regarding student fees. You know, I make already a very small stipend. As everyone knows, graduate students don't make as much money, nearly as much money as we deserve. We are overworked. Most of us are working more than the hours we're getting paid because people, you know, are manipulated by their advisors, their department, et cetera. But I just wanted to share something. According to United Way's ALICE report, which stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed, again by United Way, the annual survival budget for a single adult living in Hillsborough County is $19,128. The current minimum annual stipend for PhD students is $17,800, which is the amount of my stipend. In order to receive our assistantships, we must be full-time students and enroll in 9 credits for fall and spring. Even after our tuition waivers, student fees and tuition for enrollment for fall and spring are $1,597.36. And other departments, their student fees are even more expensive, can go about $1,100 per fall and spring semester. We already receive stipends that are below the survival budget outlined by United Way's ALICE report. And then on top of that, are required to give nearly 10% of our income back to USF, our employer. Most of us finish our coursework after about 2 to 3 years. Then to receive our stipends, when we're just doing research, we have to enroll in 9 credits and continue to pay these fees to get our stipends. So again, we are being forced to pay to work, and that doesn't make sense, especially if we're not, you know, taking classes, which they're course fees, they're tuition fees. It's embarrassing and a disgrace that graduate assistants are put in this demoralizing position. The circumstances in which graduate assistants are considered students or employees seem to be based upon the interests of USF's administration at a given time. I wish that the administration would respect us and the Board of Trustees and, you know, everyone holding the power at USF. It shows where their values lie. Based off their mistreatment of us, they truly don't value education. At least that's not what it feels like when graduate assistants are, you know, given poverty wages and we're told there's no money for us in a pandemic. And, you know, we've been told for decades now that there's no money for us, there's no money for us. And this pandemic is being used as an excuse. And it's very unfortunate for a lot of us. USF works because we do.
I would also like to share, if you don't mind, if I share a little bit of my experience, because it feels very hard to see these fees as something the university needs and not something the university is doing to take advantage of us. And I say this because I moved to Tampa to work at USF. I have lived in Tampa as a permanent resident in Florida for the last 4 years, and yet USF refuses to grant me in-state status. The last time I tried to go through this, they told me I would need a notarized copy of every single extended family member of mine living in Florida to prove my in-state residence. Why are my bills not enough? Why is my driver's license, my passport, all of the documents that show me permanently residing in here? And the difference in fees is, I don't know exactly, but it's at least $100. So I'm paying $200 more every year just because the university will refuse to acknowledge my in-state status. And so this feels very, very strategic on the university's part to profit off of us as much as possible. Thank you.
Yana, just to follow up from that, actually, on your fees, right? So if you don't turn your fees in time, you get in trouble. We also we have two more testimonies from a student. I'm going to read her email now. She asked me to read. So she's a graduate assistant and instructor in criminology as a third-year PhD student. She's a single mother, and her husband lives 500 miles away, and they're financially independent. They have a son with autism, and as a GA, she makes $21,000 annually. She says, I receive health insurance and tuition waivers as a part of my contract. I receive EBT for myself and my son. My son uses Medicaid. I received $1,000 from the initial grant at the start of the pandemic to help with new costs. We are discouraged from having outside employment. I also do not have the ability to get a roommate with my son in the home to offset costs. Since the shutdown, I've been teaching online and cannot access the campus for the internet. Accordingly, I have upgraded to a higher tier of internet service. I have also signed up for a gym off campus at a discount due to indigence at the Y, especially as my apartment closes. Both of these things I go to campus to use, so I just pay fees for those, as well as structured space and a faster computer. There's not a lot of quiet work time or space when my son is home. So up until 3 a.m. many nights to ensure quiet time to record lectures. She goes on to talk about her experience with ADHD and anxiety, which she goes on to say that the added gym and internet costs $140. She hasn't even calculated the energy consumption increase. And these are supposed to be covered in the fees that she's already paid, right? So that's one student who's faced these economic issues herself, right? She's trying to care for her family, like me too, actually, and she also has this with then paying fees on top of that at the start of every semester, and then paying late fees to get it in on time. And now we're not even getting the services, right? And we also have another testimony from an executive, actually, in our union, Joanna Lawler. I don't know if she wants to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joanna Lawler, and I am a social psychology PhD student. And I have written a testimony about this. On February 8th, 2017, I shakily ascended the steps to my apartment, shuffled to my bathroom, and vomited in the toilet. I was a 22-year-old social psychology PhD student whose body had been pushed past its limits by plasma donation. Just 6 months prior, I was a recent college graduate who had been thrilled to start the next chapter of my life at USF. I was fortunate to have received a full tuition scholarship to college. I was fortunate to have some savings left over from the 2 minimum wage jobs that I worked in college. I was fortunate to come from a middle-class background, but even my privilege did not protect me from the stress of having to return $831 in fees back to the university that at that point had paid me only $3,268, about 70% of which I had already spent on moving expenses, rent, electricity, and internet. After paying my primary living expenses and these fees, I was left with about $100 to pay for my other basic needs like food over a 2-month period. As an independent, frugal woman who entered the workforce at the age of 15, I was mortified that I could not make ends meet no matter how hard I tried. Because I feared the repercussions of violating my USF employment contract by finding another part-time job, I responded to this crisis by walking into BPL Plasma on Fowler Avenue. For USF administrators who have never been forced to sell pieces of their body in order to pay their bills, this is how plasma donation works. Your first trip to a new center takes hours. You have to bring documents proving your identity and place of residence, fill out a questionnaire about your medical history, submit to a physical examination, and have a sample of blood drawn. When the screening process is complete, your plasma is harvested for the first time. After waiting in a chair on the donor floor, sometimes for seconds, other times for hours, a large needle is painfully inserted into your arm. A machine extracts your plasma, and then the other components of your blood are mixed with saline and returned to your body. The saline feels grotesquely cold as it is reintroduced to your veins. Finally, you are paid. Plasma centers often pay new donors special promotion amounts for their first few donations. Then your payment is based on the amount of plasma that you can produce at your body weight. You can donate plasma twice in a 7-day period. Throughout my first year of graduate school, I donated plasma to multiple companies at multiple locations to capitalize on the special promotions. I was ashamed and did not tell anyone that I did this. Plasma donation side effects include dehydration, dizziness, fainting, lightheadedness, fatigue, bruising, discomfort, and infection. I dizzily walked to class and meetings wearing a sweater to conceal the bandage on my arm. I scraped by financially, but mentally and physically, I was struggling. Even after I vomited in February following a donation, I returned to the center the next week. I donated plasma regularly until I was willed $5,000 by my late grandmother. This inheritance has spared me from having to donate again. Most graduate students at USF do not earn a living wage. Even those who do are typically one broken laptop or car accident away from financial ruin. I, a childless white citizen with a middle-class background and no prior debt, find it impossible to make ends meet at USF without help. We should not have to take out loans, rely on familial support, or sell our body parts to survive. The USF administration's high fees harm the mental and physical health of graduate students, reducing our persistence and productivity. The USF administration's high fees bar members of marginalized groups from attending graduate school. The USF administration's high fees are particularly dangerous and insulting now that they are trying to increase our healthcare costs during a pandemic. So I call on the USF administration to treat us dignity and free us from the financial burden of these fees at this bargaining table.
Thank you, Joanna. So I guess with that, John, do you have a response to our proposal, or do we need to go to caucus next?
We need to go to caucus and discuss what you've told us about your proposal, those questions that we asked and you've answered now, and get back with you. So why don't we, it's now about 3 o'clock, why don't we plan to get back together at 3:20 or 3:25, something like that. Give us some time to, okay?
Okay, so 3:20.
Say 3:20, Kelly, if that's okay with you.
Okay, perfect.
We'll all jump back on. Our team will get off the call now. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dickinson, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could I ask you for one favor? If you guys are going into caucus right now, this is Matthew Eckel. If it's possible for you guys to break out your calendars and look at what kind of dates may or may not work for you in February, so that we're going to talk about whether that February compromise is acceptable for us in our caucus. So we'd really like, if we do come up with an agreement to meet in February today in this MOU, to iron that into the MOU and write it in as far as a date would be concerned, and have a good idea about when that would start, if that's okay with you.
I think that's a fair request. Let us try to do that.
Sure, yeah, we'll do the same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll jump back on about 3:20 or so, Kelly.
Okay, see you then.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so
Hello.
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
hello.
Oh, I'm muted.
I can hear you, Sam.
No, Sam, we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, maybe it was Zoom telling me I'm muted. By the way, I just wanted to tell you, in full disclosure, and I did not in any way take advantage of this. I closed it out right away, but I left my Teams open and muted myself, and I could hear very faintly John talking. So
I jumped back on, y'all.
So I of course closed that out right away because I respect your confidentiality, but I did want to mention that for future reference for your information security, so that's something that maybe you guys should double check. next time. If not.
I'm sorry, what were you saying? Are you talking to me, Sam?
I'm talking to all of you. Sorry, you jumped in the middle there. Hello, John. Just saying that during caucus, I could very faintly hear your voice over Teams. I was muted, but someone else on your side was not muted. And so, of course, I closed it out right away because I do not want to breach your confidentiality, and I respect the university's, their legal right to confidence.
This is while we were on caucus. You could hear us while we were on caucus?
I could hear your voice. I could not make out anything you were saying, but I left right away anyways. I just wanted to communicate that because of your, in full disclosure, and to help you guys, just serve as a reminder to double check that next time.
Okay.
Because I don't want to be put in a position also to violate your privacy. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. We did not know that our security had been breached.
As far as we know, nobody on our team heard anything that you guys said, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, and thank you for your patience for letting us get together and kind of regroup and go. We went through the items, and let me tell you, when it comes to the student thing, if we caused you to have confusion over that, I want to apologize. I didn't know that anything that I had said, would suggest that, the language that we put on the table and was going to be modified before it went into the contract if we agreed to it, okay? So that was just a breakdown, I think, in communication, but I think the clarification, Kelly, that you gave us was what we needed. I wasn't sure from your communication on how you wanted to do it when it came to the contract itself, okay?
Yep. Okay.
So I wanted to apologize over that. There were a couple of items that we talked about in caucus that we want to at least preliminarily address, and I've asked Sherry if she would do so, and I'm going to turn the floor over to Sherry to talk about a couple of items. Sherry, would you do so?
Absolutely. So, hi, everyone. I think this was Leanna who earlier in the conversation made a comment that she was having difficulties with Florida residency. So I just wanted to sort of elaborate a little on that. So, the state of Florida, and every state determines when somebody meets eligibility to earn residency. And so although you may not be able to grant or have permanent residency in the state of Florida created based on your own personal situation, I want to talk about how the in-state tuition rate works. So you should be submitting your timesheet or your time to a timekeeper or a supervisor in your department. They should be, when they actually enter your waiver in the system, it should be coded to get the the Florida resident rate for tuition. So if that's not happening, I'm going to recommend that you speak to that individual just to determine if they're entering the information correctly in the system. If for some reason it's still incorrect and you feel your tuition is being charged based on out-of-state tuition cost, I'm going to recommend that you reach out to Dr. Ruth Bear and she will assist you. So I wanted to make that known to all of the GAs that you should be coded in the system to receive Florida resident tuition rates for your waivers. And fees are associated, of course, with the tuition that you're being charged. So it's a percentage of that. So I wanted to clarify that really quickly. The other thing I wanted to quickly clarify is under Article 7 of the CBA, where it discusses outside employment. It does not say you cannot you cannot be employed outside. What it's saying is that outside employment cannot hinder or interfere with your status as a GA. So it cannot interfere with the work you're required to do as a GA, etc. I just wanted to make that clear, and we can talk a little bit more about that maybe later, but I wanted to let you know that that's exactly, so what the CBA is saying is that it cannot interfere with your status as a GA or the work you do as a GA. It does not say you're prohibited from finding outside employment. I just wanted to clear that up under Article 7.
Okay, Sherry, thank you so much for that. Let me now go forward and give y'all a proposal. We want to tell you that we have met with senior leadership of the university. We get our direction from the senior leadership, and since receiving your proposal, Kelly, on Tuesday, we were able to virtually do that and put our heads together and get more input. And I'm pleased to present to you what will be our final and best offer to get the agreement that we are hopeful that you will take back to the membership and see whether we can get support for it. But before I give you the proposal, and Sherry's kind enough, she emailed to you, Sam, and to you, Kelly, two pages of the proposal, and we'll go through that in a minute. Tell me if you've received your email from Sherry.
Was it sent to my personal inbox or my USF inbox?
Okay, so I'm sending it right now. I usually select both, Sam, but I always include your Gmail. So I'm just going to use both your personal emails, if that's okay. I think it might get to you a little quicker.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so just give me a second. I actually haven't hit send yet, so just hold on one quick second. All right, so I just sent it.
Okay, and since there's lots of other people here who can't see the physical copy, I'm going to post it online to make it accessible to them as soon as I download it.
Okay.
So the file name for everybody else is going to be 2020-0813, so on and so forth. It'll stand out from everything else.
Could Kelly also
Okay.
be permitted to share her screen on that? Would it be all right, Kelly, if you share your screen so that others who are on the call and can't shift away from their screen can see it?
Yes, let me just make you a presenter again.
Okay, this button and this one. Okay, that should be visible now.
All right. Well, let me make a few comments before we get into the actual language of the proposals. The university leadership wants us to make it crystal clear in expressing that the university is committed to supporting graduate student education, and that we're very, very proud of our graduate students. The university values each and every one of you. It's recognized that y'all are part of the fabric of the university and the success the university has and the reputation of the university. We are in extremely difficult times right now. Not one of us on this call had anything to create, but it's here and it's upon the university and it's affecting what the university can do when it comes to benefits and pay and increasing expenditures. But what the university wanted us in this proposal to do when it comes to insurance is to give you a whole new way of us being able to handle insurance. The university is agreeing in this proposal to accept 100% of the increase in the premium that has just been announced that was going to be going into effect. The university will pick up that entire 100% increase. The only thing that the university is proposing that the bargaining unit employees do is to continue to pay the amount that they paid last year for such coverage, which is $159 a year. So we are moving away from the proposal that we made that would have increased the amount of the premium that the bargaining unit employee would be responsible for. And this proposal would avoid also, if we weren't able to reach an agreement, a very large, sizable annual premium increase in the neighborhood of like $437 or so that would come into effect if we don't reach an agreement under the current language. So the university wants this to be a sign to you of the value that the university has towards every one of its graduate assistants, recognizing that this is a huge expense that the university is assuming to take on, but we also understand that this has not been a year that we could do anything with stipends. And when insurance goes up, it's always nice to be able to put some money in the bucket of stipends. And we can't do that this year given the financial dilemma that the university is in. So we are hopeful that we could get an agreement on that. With respect to your objection to the word student in your proposal, we will agree to eliminate the word student as you have marked in your proposal, Kelly, that we asked you about. All we ask in exchange for that is that we be allowed to amend the preamble in the proposal that we've advanced to you by adding that one sentence to the end of the first paragraph of the preamble, which will add the sentence, those individuals covered in the bargaining unit, covered by this collective bargaining agreement, are therefore recognized as student employees of the University of South Florida. We think that with that reference, then we will not need to put any student reference throughout Article 2 that we had proposed that didn't get TA'd, as well as those items that did get TA'd that had the word student in it. And we will agree that there would be no need to advance that terminology in those proposals, and we would agree to take it out of what had already been signed off in error based on some misrepresentation, I guess, about the way it was phrased at the table. And so we are not agreeable at this time, given the financial constraints that the university finds itself in, to do anything with fees, not for this 1 year period. Again, this would be a 1 year period. The MOU that the parties have both advanced, the same MOU, would be signed off. We're going to look again. We will give you a date in February. We will commit to give you a date in February, not today, but we will commit to do that next week. We will send you a couple of ideas on dates that y'all can accept in February of 2021 for our first meeting. Okay? We'll commit to do that. And that would be submitted to you. The last element that I will mention in our final and best offer that we're advancing today is that we would like for the two parties, when we reach an agreement, if we can reach one today, to agree to issue a joint statement, a joint media release that we could craft and work together on to show that we have partnered to work this agreement out, that we are committed to graduate student education. You know, we want to put the language in there about the value that the university has towards its graduate students and the understanding that the university has that you are key to our success. We want all that to be part of it, if you would so approve, and that there would be a joint statement with that would be submitted, you know, and be publicized about the agreement. So this is our proposal. It's our final and best. We're very hopeful that you will consider it and that we could TA it today and that you could present it to your membership for ratification.
I think we're planning on having a caucus. I think we need to caucus over this latest proposal. If that is,
you want to take a caucus now?
Yeah, we'd like to take one more short caucus.
Just tell us how long you need.
Let's say 10 minutes. Okay, just had to make sure I was audible. Let's say 10 minutes for this one, and then we might need one last quick one because just in case sort of a thing. So 10 minutes now and then 5 minutes later potentially.
Whatever you need, it's fine with us. Okay. We'll see if we can get the final information we needed for the February date too. In the meeting, we just didn't have time to finalize that before coming back from caucus, but we may be able to get that a couple of dates for you in February.
Okay.
All right, we'll get back on. Sherry, did you hear they could hear us when we were in caucus?
I did. So I'm going to ask the USF team to hang up from this room, and then we'll return to it in whatever the time frame that GAU has given us to come back. So I think that's the best thing. The only thing I could think of is somebody who's still in this room and didn't turn their microphone off. I mean, it's the only way people can hear anything. So, and they probably were, I'm guessing, called in on a different device is probably what happened. So what probably people could hear was the other device on. So I don't think it's, John, because we went to a different room. That has nothing to do with it. What I'm going to assume is that somebody did not hang up from this room, kept their microphone open while they were on a different device and most likely could hear. So just everyone hang up, and then we'll return in a few minutes. I think that's the best way to handle this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, y'all. So we'll see you in about 10 minutes. Bye-bye. Kelly, it's John. I'm back on.
Okay. Yeah, we're all here.
Let's give our team just a minute to jump on, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we should have been a little bit more clear on the coming back time. We've actually been sitting here for like 8 minutes.
Oh, I apologize.
That was kind of on me. I heard people switching to our other chat, so I bounced over to there instead of telling you, hey, we're leaving. We'll be back at this time.
Okay. Well, while we're waiting, we've got a couple of dates for you for February. If we can reach an agreement, and we'll put if we can reach an agreement, we'll modify the duration clause to put bargaining in February of 21. We'll give you the 2 dates, 19th and 26th, to consider of February 2021.
John, this is Sherry. Everyone from our team is on now.
Okay, Sherry, thank you. Will those 2 dates, either one of them, work for you?
Let's give us a sec. We gotta check our schedules and stuff.
What were the two?
Okay. We'll just pick one of them. Let's just pick one of them for right now.
What were the two dates?
Yeah, the
19 and
meeting
26
dates
of
that we
February.
gave were 19 or the 26th of February at 2 p.m.
Yeah, let's go with 19.
Okay with 19. Okay. All right. Well, assuming we can get an agreement, we'll shoot for 19 February 21 at 2 p.m. Hopefully, it won't have to be virtual. Hopefully, it will be face to face. Floor is all yours.
Okay, so coming back from our second caucus here, so we would like to have a little bit more clarity on the joint statement. Essentially, when I say that, I mean that we would like to have equal editorial control over that.
Sure. It's got to be equal.
Okay, because this has been a particularly contentious round of negotiations, and we don't want to be misrepresented in that.
Well, it may be that we try and it doesn't work, but I think that our thought would be to try to partner on a statement that would not be disparaging to either side. I mean, if that's the way, you're not going to get a reception one way or the other if you do that. I mean, anyway, and you want to take a crack at drafting it first and sending it to us, or we can take a crack at it and send it to you. It doesn't, Kelly. We have no pride on that. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'm sure we can work something out that's both accurate and reasonably acceptable to both parties. I'd imagine neither party is going to be totally happy, but we'll find something in the middle.
Just make sure you compliment me,
And also, we want to make sure that we think both parties should give final approval in writing before the statement is released.
Absolutely. I agree with that. It's got to be agreement by both sides in writing. It wouldn't make sense not to do it that way.
Yes. So on that condition, we are willing to take the offer that's been put forward most recently.
Okay. So why don't we do this? What if I were to email to Kelly and Sam, I'll initial, everything on this end and email it to you in the morning. I can't do it this afternoon because my wife is coming back from out of town trip. So I've got to pick her up at the airport. Would that be satisfactory where we would go through here and like we did before with this issue, make sure that I've done it accurately. I'll represent to you. I'll be as accurate as I can. And I get it to you in the morning, and then you look at it. If you got any questions, call me. Otherwise, you initial it and get it back to us tomorrow.
Yeah, and Sam and I will both initial it just to make sure we've got two sets of eyes on it this time because.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Whatever. And what we're going to do is take your proposal when it comes to the contract where all those students are out. We'll initial that version where the student is out. That word is out. And then the MOU, either one of them, ours or yours, is going to be the same language. We will, and then I'm going to be initialing the preamble proposal, that one sentence, and then that language on the insurance that we emailed you. I'll initial that page. Anyway, it'll all be in a fashion. I think it'll be pretty clear to how we do it. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't actually have a printer, so it would be very preferable if you could do this electronically using DocuSign. So.
Yeah, I'll just email it to you.
Okay. Yeah. We'll have electronic.
You can do electronic signal if you want. I don't know how to do all that, but if you want to, Sherry can help me on how to do that. Okay, Sherry, you available tomorrow?
Yeah. So John, if you want to sign it like you normally do and email it back to me, then what I'll do is upload it into DocuSign and I will send it to Sam and to Kelly. And then
is that okay with Sam and Kelly? Is that okay with you guys?
Sure.
Well, that works.
Okay. Well, Sherry, give me a little bit of time in the morning to get it to you. Okay.
Absolutely.
And Sherry, maybe you could put a place for a signature every place where John initialed as well on there.
Yep, I'll make sure that everywhere John has initialed or signed is equal. Yeah, is so that both Sam and Kelly mark the same areas. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Kelly, no, let me make sure. Do y'all want to draft it first, or do you want us to take a crack at drafting that first? It may be good to go ahead, or we could craft one. You could craft one, then we could look at them together. How do you want to do it?
I think that idea of both crafting one sounds nice. What do you think, Kelly?
Well, I just want to be clear. What are we talking about? We're talking about the
joint statement. The joint release.
Okay. I thought we were still talking about the MOU and the CBA changes.
No.
Just wanted to make sure because I was like, why would we both need to do that? So for the joint statement, both teams can write something up and then we'll try and combine the language.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll work on that right away and get something to you tomorrow.
Okay.
And if you could do the same, that'd be good. Because the word's going to get out. We need to make this a joint statement meaningful. We want it to be we want it to be, contemporaneous as close as we can to this today. So if we'll get it to you, and then you get yours to us tomorrow, and we can talk about it either by phone or electronically tomorrow. How's that?
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? Well, we want to thank y'all. We really appreciate your taking this to your membership. It does not. We will report this immediately to senior leadership just so that they know that we've had this meeting and that their efforts, at least so far, are going to be taken to the membership, and we're encouraged by that. But on behalf of everybody at the university, Kelly and Sam and your team, we appreciate all the hard work that you put into this. Keep a lot of your notes from this year because most likely we're going to be talking about some of the same things, when we go back to the table.
Yeah, the nice thing about starting earlier is I'm planning on graduating in May, so I won't be here for the full thing if it goes this freaking long again. So, yeah. But starting in February means that as long as we're meeting regularly, hopefully I might actually be able to stick around for the whole thing.
Well, good. No, it works out that way for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, y'all. Is there anything else before we hang up?
I'll see you guys at our next meeting, at least some of you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We look forward to seeing you, Jim.
Great.
Let's, when our team hangs up, I do want us to call back in on the other line briefly, if you don't mind, just for, I've got to leave here by 4:15 to get to the airport, but if we could speak for 5 minutes on the other line, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. See y'all.
Thank y'all.
Adios.
Kelly, Sam, y'all take care.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.